Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today I'm going to explain about Newton's laws of motion. In that unit there is a subunit, nature of force and its effects. Normally all the objects are in rest. So that is the natural state of an object. But when we push or pull something, we can say when we push or pull something, we are applying a force. And lifting, compressing, these are also belongs to force. So if there is a question, what is force? We can answer, force is push or pull. Lifting and compressing also effects of force. And we should learn more about force. Unit of measuring. Standard international unit of measuring force is Newton. And the instrument used to measure force is Newton's spring balance. Newton's spring balance is the instrument that we use to measure force. And force is a vector quantity. Why it is vector quantity? We know the physical quantity which has both magnitude and direction, we called it as a vector quantity. So force has a magnitude and direction, so it belongs to vector quantity. By applying a force, we can produce a motion. Those are the effects of force. By applying a force, we can produce a motion. That means, in other words, I can say object at rest can be moved. And a force can stop a motion. That means, object in a motion can be stopped by applying a force. And a force can change the direction of motion, change the speed of the motion, change the dimension or the shape of the object. That means by applying a force we can change the dimension or the shape of the object. Okay, look at this. I told you a force can produce a motion. That means object at rest can be moved. Okay, look at this picture. In this picture, the ball is in rest. Ball is in rest until an force given by a boy. Now, when the boy is giving a force only, the ball in rest start to move. Okay, you can see that. Okay. Now look at these pictures. A person catching a ball. It means by applying a force we can stop a motion. So he stopped a motion of the ball by catching the ball and change the direction of motion. A batsman changed the direction of ball by hitting the ball. So ball is coming in one direction but the batsman hitting the ball in another direction. So by hitting the ball, that means he is giving a force by hitting the ball, so it can change the direction. Change the speed of motion. You know, when cycling in a bicycle, we can increase the speed of a bicycle by paddling faster, and we can decrease the moving bicycle by applying brakes. So by giving a force, we can change the speed of the motion. We can increase or decrease the speed of motion by giving a force. Change the dimension. Change the dimension means we can, this is a rubber band. So by giving a force, he can change the shape of that rubber band. Okay, look at the picture. Who is this? It's a great scientist, Isaac Newton, who discovered the Newton's law. There are main three laws of motion. So that was discovered by scientist Isaac Newton. Now before we learn the Newton's law, we should know some terms. So that is one of that balanced force and unbalanced force. So what do you call by balanced force? So in this picture, using these two figures, you can understand what is balanced force and unbalanced force. Okay, this is a picture of pulling a rope or tug of war. So there are two groups. So each group exerting force 300 Newton in opposite direction. So one group giving a force towards the west, other group giving a force towards the east. So both groups are giving same amount of force, that is 300 Newton. So the resultant of these two forces are 0 Newton. Why? Because both forces are exerting in opposite direction. So it is balance the rope, and that is in 0 Newton. So no any movement. So if there is a balanced force, but we can say there is any motion, no any motion. But what is unbalanced force? In this group, in this picture, there are same groups, but this group pulling a rope towards the west by giving 400 Newton. Now that group increased the force to pull the other group. This group pulling the rope by 300 Newton. Now what is the resultant force? That is 400 in one direction, 300 Newton in another direction. So the resultant of these two forces is 100 Newton. So in this case, there is unbalanced force acting on this motion. So because of that unbalanced force only, this rope move, or this group move towards the west. So until an unbalanced force is there, there are no any movement. But if there is an unbalanced force, it will produce a motion. Now what is unbalanced force? You should define it. An unbalanced force is a force that changes the position, speed or direction of the object to which it is applied. An unbalanced force is the force that changes the position, speed or direction of the object to which it is applied. And to learn about the Newton's law, we should learn friction and frictional force also. I think that is new for you. Then what is friction? The friction is the force that opposes the motion of the object. So in other words, we can say the friction as a resistive force. The force which opposes the motion of the object, that is very important. The oppose the motion of the object, that is the friction. That is friction. Sorry. Okay. Now, look at this activity. One man pushing a cupboard. One man is pushing a cupboard. So the cupboard moving direction is towards east, and there is an opposing force between the floor and the cupboard. So when we are exerting a force, naturally there is an opposite force. That force is friction, that is exerted by the flow. So if there are any contact motion, so if there are two surfaces in contact, when an object is moving, we can find out there is a frictional force. Now let's come to the important points. When force is equal to frictional force, the force and frictional force are equal, what will happen? The resultant force is 0. So if the resultant is 0, what will happen? The object does not move. So the force now equal to frictional force. When force is greater than frictional force, we are giving a force than the opposing force. What will happen? Objects start to move. That means that is an unbalanced force act on the object. Now the body is moving and the force that is greater than frictional force. So we can learn more about that using these two figures. In first figure, look at that. If a person exerting 50 Newton force in a block of wood, and it's given the opposing force in opposite direction, there is a frictional force, we know. So that frictional force also 50 Newton. If the frictional force also 50 Newton, what will happen? That object does not move, that it will remain rest, and the resultant is 0. 50 Newton in one direction, another 50 Newton exerting in opposite direction, that is frictional force. So the resultant force is 0. So we can say the object is in rest, no any motion. But in this second picture, we are exerting 90 Newton force towards the east and the opposing force towards west in opposite direction 60 Newton. So what is an unbalanced force acting on these? That is we can find out the unbalanced force. 90 minus 60 Newton, that is equal to so difficult to draw, that is equal to 30 what? Newton. Okay, done. Okay, now look at this. The ball is in rest. I can explain further than the before using this same animation, because the ball is in rest, no any unbalanced force, the ball is imbalanced. Now ball is going to giving a force, so that is an unbalanced force, because the why ball is in rest, because there is no more any force exerting than the frictional force, so that is in rest. Now the person is going to giving a force, so when he is giving a force only, that ball start to move. So until an unbalanced force is applied on a body, the body is at rest, remain rest, and the body is in motion, continue to move in uniform velocities. So remain stationary mean remains. Now in your textbook there are so many applications given in related with Newton's first law. So I'll explain one of them. Okay. Now there are two pictures. Okay, there are two pictures. Look at the first picture. The bus. Now bus is in rest. Okay, imagine the bus now in rest. The passengers are sitting. The passengers are sitting on the bus. Suppose the passengers sitting on a moving bus without Okay, now look at this picture. The passenger, suppose passenger is standing or sitting on a moving bus without holding any support. If the bus suddenly stops, this is a moving bus. The passengers are sitting on the moving bus, and the floor it is attached with the floorboard of the bus. The feet are attached with the floorboard of the bus, and it is moving bus in forward direction. Now, if bus stops suddenly, what will happen? The passengers moved in forward direction. So, what is the reason for that? Because when the bus moving in certain velocity, the feet which are contact with the floorboard of the bus also has the same velocity. But if the bus suddenly stops, what will happen? Only the velocity on the that is in feet suddenly stops, but there is a velocity for the upper part of the body. So, what will happen? In this part, no any velocity because the bus suddenly stops, but still there is a velocity in upper part of the body. So, suddenly if the running bus stops, the passengers maybe fall in forward direction. I think you can understand easily. This is a moving bus in a certain velocity. The feet are contact with the floorboard of the bus. So, there is a velocity for the feet. So, if it is sudden, if the bus is suddenly stopped, that means bus comes to rest now, and the feet also start to come rest. So, in that moment, that velocity is there in upper part of the body, so that we are going to fall, or the passenger can fall in forward direction. Now, look at the second case, right? So, that is opposite to that case. That is, suppose that above passenger is in bus at rest. If the bus start to move without his knowledge, bus now start to move without his knowledge, the bus already in rest. Now, without the passenger sitting without holding any support. Now, without his knowledge, bus starts to move. Bus starts to move. Now, what will happen? The passenger will now fall in backward direction. Why? Because if the bus start, the feet also get this velocity of the bus, because the feet is contact with floorboard of the bus. Now, bus begins to move, so that velocity comes to feet also. But in upper part of the body, no any velocity. Now, what will happen? So, the passenger passenger would fall in backward direction. So, this happens because of the Newton's first law of motion. We can explain that, because until an unbalanced force acting on that, the body is at rest, remain rest. Until an unbalanced force is acting on the moving body, we cannot change the velocity of that object. And finally, why seat belt must be worn when riding in a vehicle? Because it will allow to remains at the velocity of the person who is in vehicle, even body remains the velocity of the vehicle even when brakes are applied. So, the seat belt that is necessary, seat belt must be worn when riding in a vehicle. So, that is help to prevention of falling down. So, thank you for watching this video.